To be all just come on in, Stuart. Okay, Stuart, is this not the most charming place that some of our followers have ever seen? Because I think it is. I have severe garden house envy. So here's my question of the day, you guys. You just let me know if after this video you don't have severe garden house envy too. And if you're a lucky person that already has a conservatory or your own greenhouse or your own outdoor living space, tell me just like how many ideas you get from visiting with my buddy Gail Wynn in Enid, Oklahoma, Garfield County, from whence my husband came.
His hometown.
His hometown. So Gail and I have no idea when this is going to air, but we just shot a video at Faith Farm, which is a local, just act of love.
It is.
Project of love.
That's a good name for it.
Yes. It's a community garden that she works with here through, also in tandem with Loaves and Fishes, where they raise and produce healthy organic vegetables and produce for the community.
We do.
And they shop their own. So, but enough about that. Enough about that. I want to talk about this. It's just ingenious, this garden house.
Thank you.
So, describe a little bit about how that it's a what did you call it? Expression, a love?
Yes, it's a love language.
Yes, love language from your husband, John.
Yes, he loves to build things. So, but actually the idea of it comes from my childhood. When I was a little girl, I have two sisters and there were 6 girl cousins on that side of the family. My grandmother turned her wash house on the farm over to us as a playhouse. So we didn't have just a little structure. We had her whole wash house. It had a drive-up window. It had my grandfather.
Even then it had a drive-up window.
We just opened one of the windows and it was a drive-in. And then my grandfather would pull up a stock tank in the summer and we had a swimming pool. So it was great memories of childhood.
Resort.
It was a resort on the prairie. And so I always wanted a place for all my gardening things and a place to share with my grandchildren. So it was built before my grandchildren were. But that's kind of the conception of what I was going for.
And how long has this been here?
2012, I think we built it.
Okay, I was here, we were calculating, it was maybe 10 years ago. This is a famous and favorite lunch spot. We just had a wonderful, wonderful lunch here. So these are some of the things I want to share, at least 5, if not more, brilliant ideas from this space. Starting with number 1, probably my favorite thing. This is beautiful form meets practical function. So we were laughing and saying that this is party in the front, business in the back. So Stuart, if you don't mind circumnavigating our table and going to the back where you have what?
All the ugly stuff. The lawnmower, the edger, the extra tub for beer in the summer parties, and all those things.
The indispensable.
The things you have to have.
The indispensable items.
But you just don't want to look at them all day long.
Was this your idea or your husband's idea?
This was my husband's idea. He said, let's build a wall, several feet in, and then we can hide everything else behind. And it's been genius. It's been great.
And so to really facilitate that, you've got a front door, which is so cute. And you said this was tell the story. You said you lost this battle.
Yes, I lost this battle. I wanted French doors, but John didn't want French doors. He wanted just a single door. And it actually worked out great because he wanted the single door because he wanted the octagonal windows. And so it's given me more wall space than I would have had if I'd had French doors. So it's worked out fine.
Well, and who doesn't love a screen porch door, because
Yeah.
there's this porch living vibe. Who doesn't love being able to look out this singular focal point onto the axis of all of your celosia, all of your self-seeders out there?
Yes.
I mean, and there's just, well, look at all the butterflies out there. I just feel
Yeah.
like I'm in
This
Alice
is
in Wonderland.
This
or
is a
something.
buggy year. I mean, there are all kinds of bugs.
Good
out
and
there.
bad.
Good and bad.
And surprising after the harsh winter we had.
There have been a lot of surprises since that winter.
Haven't there?
There
both,
really
both,
have.
both good and bad. But I have to say that this is one time, Gail, when I'm going to be on Team John, and
You
not
like the
on
door,
Team
the
Gail,
single
because
door.
I love the single door and the octagonal shape. So how did you decide on the octagonal shape?
John designed the outside, and his whole premise was it needs to be proportionate to the house. But he likes bells and whistles, and he said, let's just take a little slice off each corner so that it's not just a square building in the backyard. So that was his idea. And it's, we have a Cape Cod house in the middle of the prairie, which is unusual architecture for this part of the world. So it had to be shingled. It had to match the house, the cupola on top. So it's really a great little place that we've used it for parties. It's cleaner than usual because you were coming. I did sweep the floor. I do a lot of flower arranging on this table, and so it's just my little slice of heaven.
I'm beyond jealous, as anybody who has followed me for any length of time knows. But I love the fact, because it relates to one of my favorite sayings. I talk about it in my book, and that's my theory of garden relativity, that everything in the garden relates to every other thing. And so he just made this garden house proportional in scale, in tone, in aesthetic, in geography, and everything, relative to the garden, everything. And it just could not be situated more perfectly.
It looks like it's always been here.
And what I like about it too, when you decided on location, what I love about it is it's not prohibitively or inconveniently distanced from the house, but it has this wonderful destination quality to it. So when you come and you walk down your flower line path, you get here, you feel as if you're on vacation.
And we've needed that the last year and a half.
Boy,
We
isn't
really
that
have.
the truth?
I've spent an enormous amount of time out here.
So very prescient of John to know that you were going to need a garden house
Really?
in the future. But tell me again what you said, that he did this design and worked on this when he couldn't golf.
There was a really cold winter several years ago when he couldn't golf. So he worked on the design all winter, built a foam core model of it from Hobby Lobby, and here it is. And we built it starting in April of that year.
Well, it is just, oh my gosh, it is just genius on so many levels. So let's talk a little bit about it. So, Stuart, you probably already pointed to it, but I love the fact that you can sit here and you still feel like you're in the garden. Even though you've got a ceiling fan here, let's talk practicalities. We are in Oklahoma. It does get very, very hot, and in our winters, as John just attests, normally are mild enough that you can golf all through the winter most of the time. But you do have an air conditioner here, so you accommodated it with just not a big unit.
No.
So does this mean you have heat in the winter?
I have heat in the winter on a timer, so I do not run the heat all the time. I will run it for certain 2 or 3 hour segments during the day. When I do pull some plants, not a lot in here in the winter, but I do start seeds starting in January and February. So I'll set the timer up and heat it more in those months. It's not heated or cooled most of the time. Most of the time the door's open and the windows are open.
Because that's the whole essence.
Well,
of
you're
an
coming in and
outdoor-
out
Yeah.
to go to a garden and to work, and you're sweaty, and you don't want to just. I don't think it's smart.
Enhance the ceiling fan. So that's really just brilliant. So, gosh, there's just so many things to talk about. So first of all, I guess your first suggestion would be people think about how the space is going to be used, when it's going to be used. Take that into account before you build it. You said that it started 1 April and you completed it
Probably in August. Probably by August.
And how big is it?
It's 20 by 20, so 400 square feet.
So more than enough space to dine, to store your essentials, both your pretty essentials and your workhorse essentials. And then, so how did you decide to furnish it? And was that something that you planned beforehand? Stuart, if you don't mind, let's turn around and just start from the door, because I don't want to miss anything. But first of all, let's start with the ingenious, I am so going to steal this at some time in my future, wall covering.
Pegboard, everywhere.
Okay, so tell us about that.
So when John was working up the numbers and the supply list and all, he said, where do you want the pegboard? And I kind of off the cuff said everywhere. And it's been the smartest thing I did. Because what happens in here, like every gardener I know, things change season to season. So there'll be times where I'll have a lot of things hanging, drying, waiting to collect the seeds. You know, I do amaryllis. I've pot up a lot of amaryllis in a couple of months on the table. And everything changes all the time. And I also had a lot of stuff. Can you imagine? Are
you a maximalist or a minimalist,
Oh, no,
gal?
I'm a maximalist. I only have one child, and he can deal with it when I'm gone, and there won't be any fights.
That's the spirit. There we go.
And I've told them, he and his wife know, so it's no problem. But I wanted a place for baskets, for vases, for, you know, small hand tools, for big tools. I love all the painted flat surface pottery from the 40s and 50s, the McCoy, and Claire Lerner, and all those things. So I wanted to display places for those. So I simply sat down and did an inventory of everything I had. And then I drew this out, and it's like when you move into a new house, and I always sit down and draw my kitchen out and do all the moving around on pencils, which makes it easier. So I did that. And then I knew I wanted old pie safes for the corners, but I could not find them. So I was in an antique store in Oklahoma City, and they had the best looking checkout counter I'd ever seen. And she handed me a card and said, this man built it. He's from Weatherford. I can't say his name in public because he'll kill me because he's so
well. You told me he's made so many things for you. He's no longer taking your calls.
He won't call me back anymore. But he was a math professor at the school there, and he would travel around and pick up parts of old houses that were being torn down and build this furniture out of them. So he built my 2 corner cabinets, and he built my potting bench, and then he built another thing inside my home. And I mean, they creak, they smell like your grandmother's kitchen cabinets. He's just really good at what he does.
Well, can I say, I may stick a piece of that green pottery in my pocket on the way out. That makes me swoon.
That's mostly Claire Lerner, who the first piece I bought is in the back. I paid $1.25 for it at a garage sale down the street.
Okay, you're a thrifter like me.
Oh, I am. I love that. And it's really hard to find that color.
And probably, but if you found anything else that didn't have that pedigree, you probably wouldn't care as long as it matched the green, because it would just be absolutely beautiful. So are those collections that you have in there near and dear to your heart? Where are they?
Oh, well, as you know, I've gone to the beach a lot with our mutual friend Deborah.
Yes.
And our routine on those trips is to get up every morning and walk the beach together. And I would always take clothes that had pockets, and so I would fill my pockets and bring shells back. So those are shells from all of our Caribbean vacations. So yes, they do.
So beach foraging is every bit as satisfying to me as like fall foraging, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a squirrel with chipmunk cheeks, because my pockets are always swollen with pine cones and acorns and things of that nature.
And some of those acorns are from the bur oaks down the street at the Champlin Mansion, which are enormous acorns. They're just, and they sit in this little basket. They're just wonderful.
They're so sweet, and some of them can be huge. They look really cool. You probably have too, spray painted them. And that's a little piece of Oklahoma history, I get. Well, let's just delve into that, because I no longer think of you as Senator Bellman's daughter. I just think of you as Gail. But Enid has lots of history. The Champlin Mansion is part of that history because it relates to Champlin oil. Very much we were, part of the initial embryo of the oil industry and how it just took off from here. And Enid was kind of I guess, really played its role.
It did.
In that. And then Stuart, behind you, in addition to just the wonderful practicality of having that pegboard everywhere. You've got your peony cages, which have their own industrial chic vibe. You've got all your baskets. You store in floral buckets all of your like bamboo
all my
and
stakes.
your stakes and your lily supports, all of that. You store those just like I do. And then of course you probably sometimes do use them as floral buckets also. And then I love and I'm jealous that you've got a place to both hang and display your pretty extensive basket collection, but then you've got, like I say, just the practicalities. You've got your snips by the back door, you've got your jacket by the back door, lanterns. So you can segue from season to season.
Again.
With all of your fun garden ornaments and things. So here's a question I have for you. How much of this stuff migrates into the house, or once it gets out here, does it pretty much stay out here, or do you come out here and shop your garden house to use inside?
I do some, but not a great deal. I do most of my entertaining outside, either here or in my yard. So it may go into the yard and then come right back. And sometimes I'll take things in. The little bitty enameled vases I bought at Crazy Days downtown and did not use them for years, but they are perfect for children because every child cuts a flower with a 2-inch stem.
You said that earlier. Okay, that's another
Yes.
thing. That's another thing I want to record. Every child cuts a flower with a 2-inch stem. And I'm really going to digress here, but this is such a jewel. I can't stand it. One of the reasons I love Gail, we have a mutual friend that we just both adore. And they do the coolest things. And Gail and my friend Deborah, I was saying, it was probably 5 years ago, and it was how many, 10 years ago? Whatever I say, it's twice as long ago. They interviewed octogenarians, and was it exclusive to just Enid, or was it?
It was just Enid.
Just Enid. And they just let them talk and ramble about polio and the war and things. But this is such a cool idea, you guys, and it provides such an opportunity, particularly as we are going to be confined to our homes with our loved ones, perhaps again this year over the holidays, but you'll be visiting with your relatives. And you tell me your motivation for doing it.
When I turned 60 a decade ago, I wanted to know what the next stage of life was like. My child had married and was living out of state, and I was just curious. And Gretchen Rubin came out with her book, her first book.
I love Gretchen.
I do too.
The Happiness Project.
The Happiness Project, and I read it on one of our Caribbean vacations with Deborah. And so one morning we were walking, I said, we've got to figure out what's going to happen next. And so that was the genesis of it. And we decided that we lived amongst all these wise women. So we called them our wise women interviews. We invited them here for lunch and just asked them what life was like for them growing up, early marriage, and now, and what we had to look forward to.
So were you able to glean out what you wanted to know, or I would be just so inclined to be just swept up in the history of their time and what they lived through, and comparing myself, I wouldn't have been that brave, or I wouldn't. So every one of them was different. The first one was a woman named Jane, and when I said, how do you adjust to the slower pace of life? And she looked at me and said, well, Gail, you've just got to learn to luxuriate. So we're going to start a new hashtag, hashtag learn to luxuriate, because you have been a dynamo ever since I've known you. You give so much to your community. You entertain so much. You garden like a fiend. If I didn't like you, I would hate you. But she has more energy, and so for you, I do think that. How do you slow down? How do you recognize your own limitations, accept them in a gracious way? And I think that's just such a wonderful lesson to learn.
She was very wise.
But
then there was
idea.
Joni, and most of these women are gone now, but Joni had been married to a Army, I think he was, or maybe Air Force general. And she began to tell us this story about going back to Vietnam with him in 1974. And I'm not a huge history buff, but I know what happened in Vietnam in
Yeah,
1974. And as she talked, I finally just looked at her and I said, Joni, were you in Saigon when it fell? And she looked surprised. She went, oh, no, I don't think so. And she was. I'm pretty sure she was
Wow.
there relatively close. I mean, they got out quickly. But so there are so many stories buried inside people
Yes.
that a memory, something will trigger.
And I think it's so important that we mine those stories now,
Oh, they're fascinating.
because they are just fascinating. And the older we get, the more we're interested in the, in the past and what the future holds. So speaking of the past and history, so I keep kind of, I'm sorry, I have popcorn brain. Everything
okay.
I see sparks another idea. So your father, I love it when I come up here and I see the sign from Billings, Oklahoma, tiny little town in Oklahoma, from whence Governor and Senator Henry Bellman came. So so all of these car tags are from when he was governor, and the #1 Okie, just really fun idea.
The governors, and I'm assuming they still do it, but in the 1960s, when they had governors' conferences, which is like, any other business conference, they were all family affairs. And in the 60s, the governors were people like Nelson Rockefeller, George Romney,
Wow.
George Wallace,
Oh, yeah.
Orville Faubus, John Connolly. There were all sorts of interesting people. And so some of these signs are from those conferences because I have such vivid memories of them. And then Nixon's inaugural, and my mother had a clothing line called Shirley, so those are her tags
I was
as well.
wondering, I was wondering what that was. So I have very fond memories of your potting bench behind which you said your husband hung a Sun System 2 extremely powerful seed starting light or grow light underneath, and some of, I can't believe it didn't make it into the book. I think because either Deborah or I took the picture, wasn't good enough quality because I looked at it to put in the book of some images. You had some old pots lined up, and you had started some seeds. I think they were peppers, because you start lots of peppers, don't you? Anyhow, it was really charming. And then tell me about this here's another idea, cute idea number 2 for you guys to take away.
Well, I saw this on Gardener's World just yesterday. I cannot grow anything from a cutting. I just have no luck with propagating that way.
I can't believe that.
My mother-in-law could take Dusty Miller out of an arrangement and grow it, but I have a real problem with that. But yesterday on Gardener's World, one of the people talking said, just put a little glass jar. Once you've got your cutting in the pot, put a little glass jar. So it's its own cloche,
Yes,
tiny little cloche.
it's
So
fun.
that I'll let you know how it works.
Well, it's so, whether it works or not,
It's
it just
fun.
looks so cute.
It is
Yes,
fun.
it's just charming, and it's fun, and it's a fun idea, and it's also a way to reuse, recycle, repurpose all those cute little jam jars and baby food jars and things that you don't really know what to do with. But everything looks so. Now, I wouldn't say. How would you describe the interior of your house? I wouldn't say has kind of a farm chic vibe. I wouldn't describe the inside of your house that way.
No, our house is pretty traditional. It's
Yeah.
pretty, wooden floors,
Yeah, lots of artwork.
lots of artwork.
Yeah.
Pretty traditional. But we decorated this house in an era of color, so there's no gray in my house. There are no neutrals. Everything is pretty colorful,
Very
and
bright.
lots of wallpaper, which drives some people crazy.
Well, I
but
wonder,
it's coming back.
but it's coming back,
coming
as
back.
is color.
Thank goodness.
Color is coming back, and I sometimes wonder, those of us that live in Oklahoma, where the light is so strong that in our gardens sometimes, even though I like just a more homogeneous kind of a green palette, but if you're going to have color, people really kind of migrate towards really bright, vivid colors that can stand up to the strength of the Oklahoma sun. And I sometimes wonder if that kind of migrates to the interior of our houses and our interior aesthetic too. I'm not really sure, but it's this kind of thing that can really, how sweet is this bouquet?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that, I don't know if you knew, my son Johnny went to University of Virginia.
Yes.
And so I spent lots and lots of time at Monticello. And so I have a little bit of that vibe here because of the shape. The shape of the garden house, but also because I have never seen such incredible celosia.
And some of it came from Monticello.
Oh, I bet some of mine did too.
They sell the seeds in the gift shop.
Yes. And I am going to go home. You said I could have a great big bouquet.
You can take as much as you want.
Of celosia, because you said, Gail, what's interesting is you said your garden isn't at all like mine, but I see so many similarities. You and I both don't like red in the garden. We like kind of the same color palette. You have lots of green, kind of quiet green too. And your bed lines are very tailored and similar to mine. But you said, tell me about your philosophy on self-seeding.
First of all, I don't use a lot of mulch. I'll mulch in the fall, but so in order to cut down on weeds, you have to have stuff growing everywhere. So in the spring, I have a lot of larkspur and poppies, and as much as I think I will edit them out, I don't. Every year when the larkspur is taking over the garden, I think next year I won't let it go so crazy, and I do. And so then comes zinnias, cosmos, Cleome.
Do zinnias go to seed and come back?
Some, but I plant zinnias every year because I'm really trying to get this Queen line series going. And so I do both. They come back, the early ones come back, and then I planted them later this year. I planted them up until the middle of July. So I have zinnias late, usually by the middle of September they've mildewed out and I've pulled them up, but not this year, which is kind of nice. It's really good for migrating butterflies. And Cleome. Cleome is a great flower that not a lot of people grow for some reason.
It is underused. Another reasons that I have garden envy when I come here is because so many of these things, they need the space to romp and gallop and sway and dance and do their thing.
Let their seeds fly.
Yes, and let their seeds fly. And I don't have that kind of space. And I think I finally realized, that. And so now that's why I come and visit you. Because my soul still has to have this. And oh my gosh, the butterflies. Another thing that I often say that I say in my book is that a garden is a dynamic living organism, and a garden without life, without birds and bees and butterflies and frogs and snails and puppy dog tails isn't a garden, it's a stage set.
Yeah.
And we don't want that.
No, we want it to be organic, to do its thing. And the coxcomb does at the end of the season. That's my last self-seeding annual, and it goes crazy every year. And I push it back, and I cut big buckets and take it to florist, and I try to do everything to keep it from going to seed, but somehow it does. And I'm very careful about composting. I have a friend who's trying to get a 5-acre meadow going. So I take her a lot of the deadheads of things that have already gone crazy in my garden. But it comes back every year, no matter what.
Well, here's a question I have for you. It was a dilemma because I have pretty many self-seeders. It's like, how do you ever top dress your soil? Because you're always going to be covering up those seeds that you want to germinate and come back next year. So it's kind of this dilemma on how you can amend your soil. And sometimes that means you just sow at a lot of different times of the year.
And I don't put it real heavy, I mostly use my compost. I do use manure around roses and hostas and things, and hydrangeas in the winter. I use that manure for winter protection on those. And then I'll spread it out in the spring. But there are also sections of my garden that don't have as many self-seeders in them. And so that soil can be top dressed a little bit thicker, heavier.
Yeah. And she also, I think the last time I was here, your hydrangeas were just absolutely spectacular. So you said most of yours are endless summer. They bloom on new wood.
About half of mine, although every new hydrangea I bought has been an Annabelle or an Incredible or a little lime. Yeah. Something that can take more sun and that is more foolproof. I'm going to get you. You need to try some of them from the Southern Living Plant Collection. I'd love to do that.
Oh my gosh, the White Wedding it's a paniculata. It's just incredible. Gorgeous. But there is one I noticed in the back, and some other places you have some oak leaf hydrangeas. There's one called Terra. the heads are so dense. They don't, and they're so strikingly a gumdrop shape. They don't even look real. And I mean, some of the heads are like
Wow.
that
Basketballs.
big. Basketballs, and I've got a huge bouquet of them drying, or that have dried on my library table in the living room. But I need to bring you those.
Well,
and
as it happens, I'm adding to some shady beds, so that will be good.
Okay, there. Okay, so I'll put that on your Christmas gift list. I had 2 hydrangeas sitting on my front porch that I, of course, intended to bring you. And did I remember? No, because
It's Monday.
Okay, here's my number 3. I'm going to get up for this one because I so love this, and this is I know this, but I'm going to copy it when I get home because most of mine just end up in the compost pile. But first of all, I have this identical pot.
Oh, really?
This identical pot. And
I wonder where I got it.
look, she's just got all of her eggshells that look so fun in there. There's a textural quality about them. Is this your slug and snail deterrent?
Slug and snail. And for when you plant tomatoes, put them in the bottom of the hole for tomatoes.
Yeah, because it provides calcium to the soil and prevents blossom end rot. So get some kind of prized pot that you don't have anything planted in, but you want it out and displayed. And then this leads me to this other great idea here. I couldn't resist.
I know.
I just
it's like sand.
I know. I could
To play
not
in.
resist. You know, that would make a pretty mulch. I love to mulch my
would.
pots with gravel, and why couldn't you do it with eggshells? Ooh, I'm gonna have to think about that. Okay, but then, so that was my 3rd idea, and this would be 3.5. Look at this. Tell us what this is.
This is a chicken nest that was actually, we had about 1,000 chickens when I was a child. And that's where the chickens laid their eggs. And every day we would go out and gather them, pull them out of the little nest.
Now you have room, but have you ever had the compunction to raise chickens here? I don't even know if you can, if it would be zoned accordingly, if you'd be able to
You
or
can,
not.
but no, I did chickens once. I'm good.
Yeah.
Although, I'm fine.
You're good. You're good. Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah, early on. And that there's a picture of early on over there on your right.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
My dad with
Yes.
breeder chickens and yeah.
Yeah, so you've got a whole thematic going here, but wonderful little cubbies for you to put your garden gloves, to put your WD-40, and of course your rubber chicken.
That's Henrietta.
That is?
That's Henrietta. I found her in Denver in an antique store. So, and I've been looking for a friend for her, but I've never found another one.
Well, okay, then you've got another 30 years in you because it'll take you a long time to find one. Yeah, to find a Henry or whatever. And I know that you and my friend Deborah recently went to Monet, but this is Van Gogh.
That's
Have
Van
you
Gogh.
been to Arles, France, or
No.
wherever, Aix-en-Provence or Aix-en-Provence? So that's fun. Okay, so then this is the other great idea. Well, there's so many. I said 5. It could go on and on. So you've got beadboard here. And I love the way you continued it around, and it goes over the ceiling. And this place, though, you say you haven't used it, has an attic to it.
It has a little crawl space, crawl attic.
But this beadboard is wonderful, and it just harmonizes with the garden so beautifully. Do you know what color green this is?
Oh, I don't. I'm sure it's Sherwin-Williams. I could look it up for you.
Yeah, it's like a cross between a sage and a mossy green,
Uh-huh.
seafoam. It's got all of those characteristics to it.
It's a coastal green
Yeah.
to go with the Cape Cod house.
Well, okay, well then that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, well it's just, but it also is reminiscent of lichens and just all of those shades of green that I love so much. And you've just got
Butcher block.
butcher block as a surface. So tell me about this piece.
This was a Lowe's stock cabinet, and
These are wood. Okay.
when the man came to finish out my potting bench here,
The one that won't
deliver
answer
it.
your
Yes.
calls now?
Yes. I had him kind of rough it up and finish it like the rest of the pieces that he had done for me. So the new drawers, and they slide great and all of that. But
Oh, they really, wow.
yeah, so it's not an old piece, but it's made to look old. And had I known we were going to do this, I would have cleaned it up a little bit.
Oh, no. I think this is the brilliance of it, because you can tell that this is a functioning, working space.
And I think that's a real important part. To have a place like this is just a
Oh,
real
I'm
extravagance, but it also should be something that you
And look at these. Is this not just so artistic in and of itself? I love the textures of all of these, and these are just, you and I both love thrifting, but this is a way that you can press into use things, that you get. And I love the way you've marked them, not on the outside, but on the inside, with just fun snippets of pretty little paper.
It's easy to change them out that way.
And
so seeds are another thing that find their way into my pocket when I travel for some
I
strange
know
reason.
it's by accident.
It is. They're airborne and they just land.
Yeah.
And
I know,
even
I don't know how that
you'll
happens.
find one of those envelopes is from my grandson. He's 7. And last summer I taught him how to pull the marigold seeds out of deadheads, and he's been saving seeds for me everywhere he goes. He's probably going to get kicked out of the Denver Botanic Garden because
It
of
probably
it.
is. Well, I say all of the purple columbine in my yard came from the beer garden in Munich by accident. I don't know how it happened. So I did a fun project, Gail, that would be fun for you to do, and I signature made my own seed packets.
Oh, that would
with
be
my
fun.
own graphics on it, and the information. And I like to give them as gifts when people come to visit, that they can have a little bit of my garden to take home from
That's a
them,
win-
because
yeah.
that would be a really fun thing for you to do.
It's just so hard to throw things away from the garden, and seed saving
I
is
know.
a great way to spread the joy around and not have to just.
And I know, it's really hard. I read a wonderful article, I think it was in Horticulture Magazine or something, and that he said he was starting a whole new concept called driveway gardening. And it's just all those plants that you don't know what to do with, that you don't really have room for, but you can't bear to throw them away, and you don't know anybody who would take them. And they're not healthy enough to be in the garden, but they're too healthy to put in the compost pile, and so you just have,
I've done that.
I know, haven't we all?
This requires sun. This is a shade lover.
Yeah.
Please take it.
It's just, and what's tragic is it's kind of like, you'll stick leftovers in your refrigerator, and then you'll wait till they go bad and then throw them away instead of throwing them away immediately. It's kind of the same thing with your plants. You put them on your driveway until you forget to water them. Then they die. Then you feel not guilty throwing them away.
Then you can compost them.
Yeah, then you can compost. So over here, you've got so this is such a multifunctional room. And I like this idea too. So here's another idea. You've got some of your most prized and maybe favorites of the moment gardening books out here. How often do you come out here and you make a pot of tea?
And sit.
Probably not very often, do you?
I
'Cause
don't.
you don't
not,
sit
not
very
during the
often.
growing season, but in the winter I do. I do come out here. Especially, it seems like Saturday morning. It's a great place for Saturday mornings.
Because why? Hashtag learn to luxuriate. So we're gonna
work on that.
We're going to work on that. Okay, she's got a little thing here, just a cash po filled with sidewalk chalk.
For the grandkids.
And then all of your tools that I can say are immaculate.
Yeah.
Did your dad teach you how to take care of your tools?
No, my dad painted the world with a really broad brush. Both of my parents did, and I'm kind of guilty of the same. But those, it dries up and falls off eventually, I guess.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. And you've got, more baskets. This is kind of this is the first time I've noticed this. There's so many things to look at in here.
Yeah, that was, I don't know, it was, my mother had it as a table in her garden, in her greenhouse, but it's some plaque from when they redeveloped a lake complex here in Oklahoma, and my dad was coming in, I think, as 65, he was governor then.
He was governor then. So would it have been, here is a trivia question. My husband, Jamie's dad, was on the Board of Regents for University of Oklahoma. Would that have been during your dad's?
Was George Cross president then?
That was before I lived in Oklahoma, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He was from 63 to 67.
I bet it was.
It may have been.
I bet it was. I have a feeling it was.
Yeah.
Just a little factoid. And then you've got all of this displayed over here. You've got string lights, garden magic. Oh, and then you've got this whole repository of area for. Do you feed the birds a lot?
I
and
do.
all of that?
I do, but I'm in and out a lot in the summer, so I'm careful. Like I took my hummingbird feeder down because I knew I was going to be gone, and I don't want to get them hooked. But I do in the winter. I do a lot in the winter. And I used to have it at that end of the yard, but last winter I hung them all in these redbud trees out here so I could watch them while I was playing with my seeds, and it was great fun. I had a woodpecker come, which was really fun.
The
roadrunner in my backyard yesterday.
a roadrunner.
Wow.
Was Wile E. Coyote there? Just a roadrunner? I have never seen, one of the things that exploded this year, for me anyway, I've never seen so many hummingbirds in my backyard. I don't know if it's the stuff that's planted there, but they are less skittish and more fearless. Where we were shooting something, Stuart, and we heard this just bzzz, and we looked over it, and I bet 3 feet from us was just a hummingbird suspended in flight, just there, I guess, waiting for us to finish our conversation. It was an eavesdropping hummingbird. And we turned, and it hovered for a minute before it flew off. I've never seen so many hummingbirds as this year.
That's wonderful.
I know,
had a pair, but that's all I got. Were 2.
I've had a lot, and like I say,
And they can be aggressive too. They can be very aggressive.
yeah, I don't feed them, but they definitely like that dark cerise pink or kind of the red, and I've got lots of geraniums. But you've got more McCoy and different things like that over here.
I do. Those are so fun for little kids.
I should gift it to you to add to your collection. I've got a little wheelbarrow
Oh, how fun.
made of this. Yeah, there's a whole different thing that we were talking about miniature vegetables earlier today, that I think there could be a whole genre of dollhouse gardening. Not fairy gardening, it would be a different thing, but dollhouse gardening. Yeah,
There
just
would be.
miniature,
Little things.
just miniature little things. And do these serve a practical purpose in addition to...
Those are decorations for my annual Easter egg hunt.
Oh, you have an annual Easter
I do.
egg hunt.
I do, with a ladybug release and lots of kids from our church and lemon cookies. That's a really important part of the Easter egg hunt.
Well, of course it is. And as are, you probably coordinate it whenever possible with your tulips.
blooming. That's how I buy my
blooming.
tulips, is when Easter is going to be, whether it's early or late each year,
Okay, now that's fascinating.
and plant them down my path. And so far it's worked. And spring, April, late March and early April in Oklahoma is just glorious with redbud trees.
It really starts late March even.
Yeah.
And it's if it's not windy or hot, it's a protracted period of time that can
is.
be really, really beautiful.
And we have a flowering cherry tree at the other end of the yard that's just, so it's kind of a magical
Well, that's
tradition.
another tip that you do brilliantly, and I talk about it a little bit in my book, but is entertaining when things are at their peak. So you don't think about, a lot of times about, maybe entertaining during an event or whatever, but the event is, whether they bloom early or late, during hydrangea season or during tulip season or during redbud season or just celosia season.
Yeah, we did dinner group with Oktoberfest in our yard weekend before last, and it was perfect. All the coxcomb just gone crazy. So.
Well, it just could not be any better. You've got your garden hats here. Last but not least, tell me about the flooring and then this wonderful French pastry table, it looks like.
It is.
It is.
Except we had it made.
Okay.
Someone in Oklahoma City built the base, and then we just added the marble to it. But it's the height of a pastry table, which is also a good height for flower arranging.
And so the chairs, were they custom?
No, they're Pottery Barn.
But it's not a stool height, and it's
No,
not a
it's
chair
not.
height.
No, it's somewhere in between. And it just, we bought them together, so we coordinated it. It wasn't by accident. So we knew about what height we wanted.
Is
for
there a
this height
fourth
thing.
one?
Yes, right there.
Oh, okay, of course.
And the floor, I was willing to just keep concrete, but John said, oh no, let's make it nicer than that. So it's regular old linoleum, like from when we were kids.
And now that is so.
It came back around.
Oh yes, it came back around, and
I sweep it on a regular basis, and I mop it once or twice a year with a steam mop.
Well, but it shouldn't. a floor like this should not be pristine to
No,
me. I mean,
no.
I think it needs to kind of be this way. And you know what? It's got a little give to them. I didn't
does.
really realize that linoleum could have a little bit of buoyancy, so your legs don't get tired.
So
when
much
you're
better
arranging
than brick
flowers.
or for your back. So,
Well, it just.
but you know, if you're really going to use a place like this, you don't want. I love the black and white tile floors. They're gorgeous, but upkeep would be very difficult.
Well, and I think sometimes too, you don't want things to be too precious. And this is the perfect venue for things that are pre-loved, pre-used, pre-aged,
Yeah.
because they have, you know, they've got that luscious patina of things that have aged well over time.
And been used, you know,
And been used
have
and
a
loved.
story to tell.
Yes. Well, you have undoubtedly used the heck out of this place, and I have been the lucky recipient of your hospitality.
Well, thank
my
you.
dear.
Thank you
so much.
I've enjoyed having you. And Stuart.
We'll be back.
Good.